Hey guys, it's Maddie and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to do another recent reads wrap up. So I have two books, The Spectacular Now by Tim Tharp and Something Borrowed by Emily Giffin. We're going to start with Something Borrowed. I'm going to kind of give like a summary of the book and then we'll get into my thoughts after. So we follow essentially like two main characters. We have Darcy and Rachel. Rachel is she's a lawyer. She works as an attorney in the city. I think this takes place in New York. But she has like no self-confidence. She's very down and low on herself and always thinks like, woe is me, that she just gets the shit end of the stick and she's just very like mediocre at best. And then we have Darcy, who's like the wild party girl, who's like the stereotypical blonde, tall, skinny, gets all of the guys' attention, is very confident in herself. Darcy knows what she wants and she goes for it, which is exactly what happens when Rachel introduces her to Dex. Dex and Rachel went to law school together and they were really good friends, and then Darcy and Dex headed off essentially right away and they start dating. They've been dating for 7 years, and then flash forward to like the present day when this book really takes place. They are engaged and planning their wedding, and Rachel is the maid of honor in the wedding. Dex and Rachel had always been pretty friendly, and Dex is presented as this super attractive guy. He is also a lawyer. He's just like the hottest shit and everyone wants to be with him. And him and Rachel were friendly throughout law school. Nothing ever happened. Rachel had like a slight crush on him, but it never went anywhere. And she always thought like, oh, Dex is too good for me. He's way out of my league. I could never be with him. So she just kind of like shut that down real quick. Except there is like one moment in law school where they're like kind of connected, but then that's it. And on the night of Rachel's 30th birthday, she gets pretty drunk. Darcy throws her a surprise party, which it wasn't a surprise, but Rachel goes to her birthday, gets pretty drunk. Darcy also gets like blackout, needs to go home, and then it's just Dex and Rachel left together at the end of the night, and then they end up going home and hooking up. And then this affair keeps going for a little bit. They get chatting and then they get to the topic of law school and how Rachel had a small crush on him, and she's like, oh, but you would have never known, like everyone had a crush on you. But then Dex brings up the fact that he actually felt the same way towards her and just thought that like she turned him down, so he never pursued anything, and that only adds fuel to their affair fire. It's also important to note that neither of them felt guilty or had any really awareness of what their actions were going to cause and who it's going to affect. Like they kind of thought about Darcy and like, oh, I hope she doesn't find out, but they never thought of her as in, wow, what I'm doing is actually really shitty to my fiance and to my best friend. They never really considered that. But then the whole time Darcy's trying to set Rachel up with like other friends and friends of a friend and get her going out and stuff. But this whole time they're also all hanging out as a group. Like they're a close group of friends. So Darcy, Dex, Rachel, and then a few others. They're hanging out this whole summer and spending so many weekends together. And they're just kind of like ignoring what they do when they're alone. Meanwhile, this whole time, Rachel is still helping to plan the wedding of her best friend and her mister. And every time they go out, it kills Rachel to see Dex with Darcy and to see him like kissing her and loving her when she knows that behind closed doors they're hooking up. He's saying, I love you to Rachel and all of this kind of stuff. So she's like jealous, rightfully so or not. She's still jealous of how Dex is with his fiance. Then we go back and forth a lot with Rachel where she wants to call it quits with Dex and like doesn't want to be with him anymore, and is like kind of has moments of clarity where she's like, oh, what I'm doing is actually a little bit messed up, like maybe I should stop. But she never wants to because she thinks that she actually has these true feelings for Dex and that he feels the same way, and she has the occasional hope that he's actually going to leave Darcy and be with her and like she's the chosen one. And it's just a lot of back and forth trying to keep up with if they're on again or off again, if Dex feels the way he says truly for Rachel, or if he's just like playing her and stringing her along until the wedding. And it all kind of plays out at the end. Now for my thoughts on the book. The ending I did not like, but I don't see it ending any other way. It was the most tie it up in a bow type of ending. I'm not going to give any spoilers, so don't worry about that. But I also didn't really feel a deep connection with the characters, and it was a very like chick lit, and I didn't overly enjoy it. I don't know if I just didn't enjoy the story or didn't enjoy the way it was presented. Like maybe if it was written by a different author, I would have liked it more, but I don't like the cheating thing. I'm not really like into that. I'm not into the sneaking around behind people's backs. Like even if it is in fiction, it's just I don't really enjoy it. And the characters, I didn't really like any of them. I didn't connect to any of them. I wasn't rooting for anyone particular, except for this one character, Ethan. I really liked Ethan. He is Rachel's best, like one of her other like closest friends, but he lives in England. I honestly thought like he would play more of an important part in the book, but he didn't. But I liked him. He was my favorite out of the whole freaking book, and he maybe had like 5 pages worth of dialogue. This book was published in 2004, and this book just summarizes like all of like the trashy movies and chick flicks and chick lits. This is just your stereotypical book, I would say. It was fine. I gave it like 2.5 stars out of 5. It just wasn't my favorite. I just did not really like it. I didn't like the characters, didn't like the plot. It was just a meh read. And then the tropes in the beginning of the book are triangles, risk-taking, kind of like more like the risk-taking I would say is like sneaking around and trying not to get caught, female friendships, single women. And yeah, that's about it. But anyways, yeah, I did annotate some of the parts just because some of them were really funny. These were like funny moments that I laughed about, but yeah. And moving on to the spectacular. Now, I really enjoyed this book. However, I think my review might be tainted. I don't know good or bad, but I had seen a preview for this, the movie adaptation of it, and Sutter is played by Miles Teller and Amy is played by Shailene Woodley. And they are two of my most favorite actors and actresses, so I just envisioned them this whole time while reading the book, and I love them. I love them as actors. I think they do a great job. So when I was imagining Sutter and Amy, I was thinking of Miles Teller and Shailene Woodley. So this definitely didn't do any harm to my reading experience, but it might have heightened it if I hadn't known otherwise, like put a face to the character's name and kind of had my own creative liberty on that. But anyways, I give this book, I am torn between like a 3.5 and a 4 stars because it was a great book and I think I read it at a good time, but it wasn't over the top wowing me. Anyways, let's get into my summary of it. So we follow Sutter Keeley. He is an 18-year-old high school student, and he is a partygoer and the life of the party. He enjoys a good alcoholic beverage, specifically 7-Up and whiskey. He also enjoys smoking pot, and these get him into some trouble. There are quite a few consequences that follow his drinking and smoking habits. For example, the very first line of this book is, "It's a little before 10 a.m. and I am just starting to get a good buzz going." This is an 18-year-old high school student. But Sutter is like, he's a funny guy. He's friends with everyone. He's very like outgoing. He's not like very reserved at all. Will talk to anyone. And anytime he talks to someone, they always have like a memory of being freaking wild and crazy, usually alcohol induced. He also has multiple girlfriends, or like has had multiple girlfriends, but ultimately they all get like tired of him and end up leaving him, and then he just moves on to the next one. And he's like a pretty shallow guy, or so you think. He's pretty shallow and only like, he's a very like physically attracted to women and a very physical man. But essentially drinking is like his whole personality, and I don't think there is probably a single chapter in this book where alcohol is not mentioned at least once or twice in some form of another. So Sutter relies heavily on the alcohol to bring out any sort of personality in himself. For example, he even shows up to his job drunk, where he sells suits and ties, and so much so that customers actually like avoid going to that store, and he like his boss knows what he does. But when we start this book, Sutter has a girlfriend named Cassidy, and ultimately they end up breaking up. This is not a spoiler at all. This is like kind of sets up the whole book. But she leaves an impression on Sutter that carries throughout the whole book, and he never quite gets over her, and he always is like yearning for her and wants to be with her, wants to get her back, but she's just tired of his drinking habits and how he like treats her and how he doesn't care about her or like have any consideration for her. And then we are introduced to Amy Finicky because Sutter wakes up passed out from being drunk on a front lawn that she drives past while doing her paper route in the morning. And this is like the start of their friendship. Amy is super reserved. She's like borderline shy, very like nerdy, doesn't really have many friends, doesn't go out partying, doesn't drink. Oh, but then she gets introduced to Sutter and her whole world is changed and upside down, and she takes on some of Sutter's habits, but she also like rubs off on Sutter and brings him some like awareness that there is a future and that he is more than just his drinking. And Sutter kind of takes on this friendship with Amy as a bit of like a challenge for himself, and he wants to show her how to be confident, how to put herself out there. But I think Amy also does that for Sutter and shows him that there is more to life than just drinking, and that he is actually a deep person and has some pretty good personality to him. This book mostly follows 3 different storylines, or like it follows Sutter's relationship with 3 different entities, 1 being with Cassidy, 2 being with Amy, and 3 being with alcohol. And there's a lot of like dysfunctional family going on in this book too, on like all sides. It's just like very chaotic. Like nothing is easy in this book. It is just like not big, huge chaos, but it's just not, no one has it easy in this book. It is not like a very lighthearted, happy read at all. There are funny moments, like really funny one-liners in here, and that's basically all I tabbed were just hilarious moments. But those little glimpses are kind of just like, there's highs. There's not real low lows, but like the bar is set pretty low, and then when you get a funny moment, it like jumps a little bit, but then you go right back down. So now we'll get on to my opinions and my thoughts on this book. Like I said, I'm stuck in between like a 3.5 and 4 star. I don't really know. Like this book will leave a lasting impression on me, but I didn't overly enjoy my time reading it, if that makes sense. Tim has a very interesting writing style in here. A lot of his segues to dialogue is using phrases like, so I go, or I'm like, or they're like, or they go. Not like, I'll try to find an example. So here, this is kind of what I'm talking about. Stupid Ricky volunteers to lend me some money, but no dude, you two go ahead. I don't like the idea of my wallet sitting in my car in a dark parking lot. So just very like casual conversational writing style, which I have never read before, and I kind of liked it. I liked how casual it was. Sutter is a very bleak character. He sees no future for himself whatsoever, and it's like kind of depressing. It's hard to get through because you see him gain more awareness throughout the book, but he doesn't really have any character development, and you just so badly want him to realize like he can have a future. There is more out there for him than falling into the same cycle as his parents, as his dad, and he is capable of so much more, but he just doesn't really get it. He doesn't see it. A lot of the people around him see it, but he just doesn't. And it's like, you just want to grab him and shake him. As the book insinuates, it is the spectacular now, and that is Sutter's philosophy to life, living in the now, which causes him to do some reckless things, some reckless activities, usually influenced by alcohol, but he just is so about living in the now, and that is the whole premise of this book. I did like Sutter. He was a very likable character, but likable from a distance. Like if he was a real person, I don't know if I'd want to be around him, but reading about him and being in his head, that's what this book is. Like you are seeing everything from Sutter's point of view. You are getting his whole insight to all of his thoughts, and just what he is going through, what his thought process is. So it's very interesting, and like you understand why he thinks the way he thinks, but you're still just like, man. And Amy is so sweet. She sees him for a lot more than he sees himself, and she also wants a future for him, thinks he's capable of it, tries to set him up for success, and tries to do as much as she can for him, but ultimately it's Sutter's decision what he does at the end of the day, and she can only do so much. So that's a little bit heartbreaking to watch that unfold as well. I just want to read one of my favorite lines from this book, or one of my favorite passages, just because, like, oh, it's so funny. I just have to bring up how funny it is again. And I think it takes maybe a special type of sense of humor to think this is funny, but there were so many times I was like laughing out loud. So right now, Sutter is talking about Amy's friend Crystal, and this is what he has to say about her. The fact is, she's very much a non-beautiful fat girl, whereas Cassidy's voluptuous with grand monumental curves. Crystal Crittenbrink is what you'd call amorphous, a blob. She has a very little face in the middle of a big pink head. Her mouth alone is about the size of a dime, but the real clincher is that she has her dull brown hair done up in this weird ponytail that starts at about the crown of her head. You have to know she looks in the mirror every morning and thinks that is the height of style. I just think that's so funny. The tropes listed in the front of the book, potentially some trigger warnings as well, is self-destructive behavior, dating and social customs, substance abuse, high school, schools, step families, family life of Oklahoma, and Oklahoma in general. Anyways, my last thought about this is that I did enjoy this book, and I thought it was very well portrayed, definitely for like a younger audience, but it was just a little bit frustrating for me because I'm like, frick Sutter, just get a grasp on yourself and see what you got going on, but it just never really happens. You never get there. It's not a satisfying read. It doesn't all come up to a conclusion that you're like, wow, yes, happy ever after. It's just not that one of those books. It's like kind of real life. It's raw, and that's what I appreciate about it. And I think this book could be a great tool for doing some like deep personal reflection if you choose to do so, and if you want to go down that route. I think you could get a lot out of it, and maybe like kind of look at how you handle life, handle like drinking, living in the now, looking ahead for the future. And I have done a little bit of that. I think I would like to sit down and do some more of it. But yeah, anyways, these were my two most recent reads, and I recommend The Spectacular Now. I recommend Something Borrowed if you got not much else going on, or you want a very easy, quick read that is just kind of meh. Anyways, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!